Are you listening?
Welcome to the Nerf Report. My name is Bryant, and for this week's show, I wanted to talk with you about the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, who, in case you've been living under a rock, have quickly become one of the most popular and in-demand pieces of tech for 2020. And the reason I wanted to take this episode to talk about these consoles is because since the day that these consoles were announced, people have just been so hyped. Like, I remember the day after the Xbox Series X was announced, Xbox fans began to hype up the console's powerful specs, and I think everyone was just so blown away by Xbox shadow dropping the console's announcement at the Game Awards. And look, even as a non-Xbox gamer, I was hyped. And I think it was so awesome the way that they announced it. And for PlayStation fans, Sony had this 5-month roller coaster of anticipation where every single week gamers were like, oh my god, we're gonna see the PlayStation 5 this week.
3 days later.
I think PlayStation's gonna drop it this week.
3 weeks later.
Oh, Cory Barlog changed his profile picture. We must be getting the PlayStation 5. And as someone who was covering that time period, it genuinely felt like a solid year. But when Sony finally announced the PlayStation 5, their fans freaked out. In one moment, all of that anticipation, the build-up, and the general craziness felt worth it. Because there it was. There was the PlayStation 5. And much like other gamers, what this announcement meant for me is, well, looks like it's time to start saving money. If I put $50 away for each paycheck for the next 10 weeks, I might have enough money to buy this console. And keep in mind, this is 2020. You know, it's been a massive year of uncertainty. Luckily, I have been able to stay employed during the pandemic, but there were nights that I genuinely could not go to sleep because I was like, this shit is one Jenga block away from collapsing. So being honest, the idea of putting $500 away for a console almost didn't even seem worth it. But I did. And when the announcement came that pre-orders were going live, I rushed online, just like the millions of other gamers out there. And we all waited. We hit refresh buttons, tried to check out, waited some more, hit some refresh buttons again, waited even longer, and then hit the refresh button again. In fact, personally, I spent 2 hours on Best Buy's website. 2 hours! I could have done so many more productive things with my life. And it's ironic to me now because I had the chance to buy a PlayStation 5 from Target earlier in the day, but I kind of looked at it like, Target's just gonna mess this up, and little did we know that everyone messed it up. But getting back to the story, I kept on refreshing. And in a moment that stayed with me, Best Buy's website alerted me, sorry, we are sold out and can no longer fulfill your order, which admittedly sucked. You know that scene in every campy Christmas movie where you're watching the kid and he opens up the presents on Christmas and he doesn't get what he wanted and there's like sad music? That moment was like that. But because the money's in savings and, well, it's already set aside for this, the hunt continued. And I found out that Amazon was going to have consoles at midnight my time, so I kissed my wife goodnight, sat at the PC, and waited 3 more hours for the sale to go live. Long story short, I was lucky and privileged enough to get a PlayStation 5 that night. But I left that day knowing how lucky I was because there were tons of other people who didn't get a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox during that week. And this is kind of what I expected going into this launch. Like, I remember with the Nintendo Wii, my brother and I, we called what felt like almost every single GameStop in the state of Arizona. And when we finally found one, it was like a scene out of Fast and the Furious. We were speeding down the freeway, swerving in and out of traffic, blowing up tanks, skydiving from planes. It was the best day of my life. So when Sony and Xbox announced their consoles, I figured, well, it's new tech. Of course, there's going to be delays, there's going to be shortages. This is just the type of things we need to expect. That being said, I didn't expect an influx of companies buying up consoles and reselling them online. Which, look, I live in America. Screwing the small guy to get to the top is kind of in the fine print of the Constitution, so I completely get it. But this one seemed to suck even more for the fact that, well, I don't know if you saw this story from last week, but a reselling group called Crep Chief Notify has reportedly secured 3,000 PlayStation 5s. The company utilizes state-of-the-art bots that allow their members to circumvent wait times and get a one-up on the average consumer. And to put more salt in the wounds, we've seen the photos and videos of stacks of Xboxes and PlayStations with people trying to cash in on consumers' desperation. And look, I'm 30 years old, so I will be the first to admit that this is nothing new. Each year, there seems to be the hot item that resellers are trying to make a buck off of. And I mean, off the top of my head, we have Furbies, Pokemon cards, Tickle Me Elmos, Hatchimals, but the result seems to always be the same. Resellers buy up the inventory, jack up the prices, and then consumers get mad and call resellers scalpers. Which is kind of a weird term, right? Scalping. Like, on the American frontier, the Native Americans would scalp the heads of their enemies, and eventually that turned into the frontier settlers paying Native Americans for the scalps of the opposing tribes. And then when the railroad came to town, people would buy the unused train seats and sell them at a profit. And people at that time were so outraged that they associated the act of reselling tickets with the removal of another man's scalp and selling it. Which, before you get into the comment section, let's just be extremely clear. Reselling a PlayStation 5 and scalping another dude's head to resell it are so far apart on the realm of comparison. But think about it. Consumers today are so outraged that they are using that term to express their frustration. And again, mazel tov to you, God bless America. But if you're buying a $500 console and flipping it for $1,700 on eBay, yes, maybe scalper isn't the most appropriate term to describe you, so let's just use jackass. That seems a lot more fitting. Because I go back to that night when I couldn't buy my PlayStation 5, and I was so bummed. And then I think about the millions of other people out there who still can't buy one. And then there's this person who's just sitting in his basement with hundreds of PlayStation 5s trying to make a profit off of the demand. And it's disgusting. And to clarify again, just so there's zero confusion, definitely not the equivalent of scalping another dude's head off, but it does warrant you being called a jackass. Like in 2020, with everything going on in the pandemic, people dying left and right, protests in the street, record unemployment, evictions skyrocketing, and this is the type of human that you choose to be. I mean, it's really telling. And I've been hearing a lot of people say that, companies like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, or Amazon, they need to step in. That these companies should implement, some type of new practice, require a valid ID to buy one of these consoles in hopes that that might combat these resellers. But for me, I mean, that's kind of like asking the inmates to run the prison. Walmart and Amazon are some of the biggest resellers in the world. They don't make the stuff that's in their store. They buy and then they resell it. And when they do make stuff, what they do is they find products that people like and that they're buying, and then they go knock it off for half of the price, putting the original company out of business. So expecting companies with questionable business practices like this to regulate other resellers with questionable business practices probably isn't going to happen. And sadly, there really isn't a good solution here. Like if Best Buy were to say, 1 PlayStation 5 per customer, these guys would just build a bot that could circumvent that rule to begin with. I mean, the easiest solution here is don't buy a PlayStation 5 until Sony floods the market with more inventory, causing these resellers to be stuck with thousands of PlayStation 5s and Xboxes. Or, maybe even simpler than that, just be a better human. Don't be a selfish consumer who's trying to take advantage of other people for profit. Because despite what Gary Vee or other side hustle YouTubers will tell you, buying and flipping for a profit doesn't make you a baller, a hustler, or a badass business genius. It makes you an opportunist. An opportunist who, at the end of the day, is no different than someone buying up toilet paper and selling it for hundreds of dollars. Or a trust fund baby whose daddy buys him a pharmaceutical company and then he turns around and just doubles the price of medicine that people need to live. In my book, you're all in the same boat. Opportunists who would double cross their fellow human if only to make $1. But like I said, America, home of the brave, land of the free and all, but if that boat starts going down and you need a life vest, Don't be coming to me for a handout. Hey, thanks again for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw and you want to see more content just like it, which who wouldn't, hit the subscribe button right there. And while you're down there, hit the like button. Maybe even consider becoming a Nerf Report best friend, just like the people listed down below did. In fact, don't you want to see your name there? I know I do.